All right, let's talk about the rhythm section. Now, we're really talking 4 instruments in one here, but they all work together for one cohesive unit. First thing to think about, are you going to set up the rhythm section the way you usually do? Now, we've gone over the setup a couple different times and just had a test on it. Usually with the piano all the way on the left-hand side, bass between the drums and the piano, guitar in front of the drums. That's pretty much the best way to go. As I think I've mentioned before, I don't mind having the bass on the drummer's left side because then they get to be on the hi-hat side, so it's easier to lock in with the drums. But that can sometimes cause, then you're putting the drums right by the piano, and sometimes the piano is the only instrument that'll be mic'd, and you don't want the drums to be right next to the, that close to the piano mic, so best to stay away a little bit. Of course, each rhythm section instrument has their own role, right? Piano, of course, is chordal support, but also rhythmic drive through its comping, but then sometimes playing the melody, either as a feature or just playing melody along with horns. And guitar is kind of the same. A lot of melody stuff, which means you need a guitar player that can read. But guitar players, they'll play the melody, again, chordal support, rhythmic drive, but always in a different way than the piano. The biggest thing with having a piano and guitar in your band is making sure they don't both comp the same way at the same time. And we'll talk more about that as we get into those. Bass is kind of the other way around. Its main purpose is rhythmic drive and then harmonic support. Melody a little bit, but not nearly as much as piano and guitar. And then, of course, drums, not only rhythmic drive, but also what I call rhythmic gravity. They bring everyone into the beat. They bring the whole band together and kind of suck everyone into the same groove there, ideally. That's what the drums are helping to do. Should you use a metronome in your jazz band? Well, this is Texas, so everyone uses a metronome in their band program, so I'm sure the answer to this question from a lot of schools is probably yes. I would say the answer should be no unless you have a drummer that just cannot keep time. But a metronome ends up being a little bit of obviously a metronome is a bit of a crutch, but you also don't need to have perfect, quarter note equals 120 time for a song to work. That's playing with a click track. That's doing it for recording purposes. A metronome should only be for practicing things at a certain tempo or getting a tempo in your head. The drummer and the whole band in general should be able to keep time. And if it sags a little bit here and there, that's not really a big deal. It's more about having you'd much rather have a good groove and the time waver just a little bit than great time but no real groove. So only use the metronome if your drummer is showing that he or she cannot keep a tempo. And then you use it mostly for demonstration purposes. Like, see, this is where the tempo is. But don't use it for rehearsals if you can at all avoid it. Because, of course, it's not just the drums that are responsible for rhythm. A, it's the whole rhythm section. And B, it's really the whole band's concern, especially lead players, to keep the rest of to be the rhythmic lead for their section. It's up to the whole band to work together. You can't just say, drums are in charge of the rhythm, everyone else be cool. Drums are really going to, like I said, they're the rhythmic gravity, but everyone works together on this. And in general, I would say rhythm section dynamics especially are based on hearing the piano. The piano is going to be the hardest one to hear. Drums, obviously, are never hard to hear. Your bass and your guitar will be amplified. Piano may be mic'd through a PA, but they're not going to be amplified on stage. So being able to hear the piano is one of the biggest concerns of, are you too loud? Are you too soft? If you can't hear the piano, it's too loud. It's a good litmus test, as they say. So let's talk about the piano. And first of all, when we say piano voicings, like what are they? Why do they matter? Well, piano voicings are essentially how you spell the chord. If you say, play a C7, and yes, the notes are C, E, G, and B flat, but if you just go C, E, G, B flat, and just play a root position chord, A, that's not very hip, and B, that doesn't make it very easy to go to the next chord. Since things move in a circle of fifths so much, going from a D minor 7, D, F, A, C, to a G7, G, B, D, F, you're not going to move your entire hand down. What you should do is go from D, F, A, C to D, F, G, B, right? That would still be a G7, except for you're only moving 2 notes and you're keeping all the voicing very close. Nice. The voicings are there to not only help your piano player keep their hands in the same general range, but also to really show the voice leading of the different chords. You have to get your piano player off of all root position voicings as fast as you can. And there's a few things to think about But first, here's some good jazz piano books to look at. The Mark Levine Jazz Piano Book is a favorite of jazz piano classes all over the country. The Frank Mantooth Voicings for Jazz Keyboards really nice. The Dan Hurley Jazz Piano Voicing Skills. Yeah, there's books by Jamie Aebersold. There's Jerry Coker, Jim McNeely. They all a lot of good books out there. But those three especially are kind of universally known for being used in beginning jazz piano class. And in general, you want your voicing range to be kind of between C3 and C6. Too low, obviously it gets too muddy and you get in the bass's way. Too high, and it just sounds kind of silly. If you play even as the C triad up really high in the C7, C8 range, that doesn't sound like jazz, right? It doesn't sound like anything with special effects. So keep it in the middle, not too high, definitely not too low, but nice and robust. And your voicings, so getting back to voicings should have two notes in them all the time, the third and the seventh. The reason that the root and the fifth are the first ones you take out are for two different reasons. One, a good piano player, even with their left hand, but definitely the right hand, will not play the root because the assumption is always that you're playing with a bass player and they're going to play the root, right? Unless you're doing a solo piano gig or something, you don't need the root in there. And the fifth is the least interesting note in any chord. Right? The third controls whether it's major or minor. The seventh controls whether it's dominant or a major seventh or a minor seventh. Those are your color tones. And obviously nines and 11s would be as well. But thirds and sevenths are what really those are what the chord is all about. So even if your piano player is just doing thirds and sevenths, they're still going to be able to have nice voice leading in those chords. So always start your piano players with just those simple things. So go with thirds and sevenths, and then you can add on to those. A good 3-note voicing is usually a 3-7-9 or a 3-7-6. Again, assuming that either the bass is playing the root or you're just playing the left hand root and then those notes in your right hand. Again, the fifth, that's unless it's an augmented chord or a diminished chord, the fifth is the last note you want to put in because it's really not a very exciting note. Some good 4-note voicings, 3-7-9-5 or 7-3-6-9. Obviously, this all goes along with the voice leading and the chords. But those are some good ones. Again, don't play the root if you have a bass player. A, you'll kind of make the bass player mad. B, is having two competing notes down in that range, especially because the bass player, there are obviously times when the bass and piano will be unison on specific lines, but if the bass player is just walking or it's a ballad and they're just playing half notes, whole notes, they shouldn't have to compete with the piano player's left hand. So don't do that. And of course, piano comping should be kind of sparse and syncopated. Have a little oomph there, but it shouldn't be a lot of long chords unless it's a ballad and you need to do that. But general swing comping is just nice, short, clipped comping sounds. And above all else, stay off the pedal. So many piano players, especially like maybe at the middle school or high school range, you've got a piano player that has been taking piano lessons since they were 5. And they can play the piano and they can read really well, but they're so used to getting on the pedal because that's what so much classical literature does, that they always just go to it. And you don't want, if you want your voicings to be bump, or your comping to be bump, boot up, bop, bop, with the, you'll lose all of that cool, rhythmic effect with the piano, with the pedal on, is ba, da, 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 da. That's going to sound silly. So, tape their leg to the piano bench if they have to, but stay off the sustain pedal. All right, so one of the things I mentioned earlier about guitar and piano, is that you need to make sure that your guitar and your piano aren't doing the same thing at the same time. They have very similar, or can have very similar function in a jazz band, so we need to make sure they're not just always both doing rhythmic comping or both doing long notes. Probably the best way to approach it would be during solos. Piano will comp for one solo, the guitar will comp for the next one, but they're not comping together. And on a swing tune, well, let me get into this. So, first of all, you need a good jazz sound for a guitar. This is going to be one of the hardest things because most high school kids or junior high kids aren't going to have a nice hollow body archtop guitar that's going to be great for playing jazz. They're going to have a Fender Stratocaster or worse, maybe a Flying V, who knows. So you're going to have to make something, make the best of it sound-wise. Lots and lots of neck pickup. They'll have a selector that'll go between their bridge pickup and their neck pickup, and maybe they have a pickup in between. The neck pickup is going to be the one that's the warmest and has the least amount of treble. The bridge pickup will be really high and have a lot of overtones. You don't want that. You're going to play mostly on the upper 4 strings, stay out of the bass range, and with mostly downward strokes. For swing comping, downstroke quarter notes are what you play all day long. That's the Freddie Green sound, who was the guitar player for the Count Basie Orchestra for I think 49 years. That's how swing guitar is played. And part of having a guitar player in your band is going to be convincing them that to play their role, basically. I mean, let's be honest about guitar player mentality. People start playing guitar because they like guitar, they like to solo, they like to be out front and to be heard. They don't start playing guitar because they want to play rhythm guitar, right? Most people in bands that play rhythm guitar do it because somebody else in the band is better than them and they're playing lead guitar. And jazz guitar is rhythm guitar times 2 or divided by 2, depending on how you think about it, because you have to be really out of the way and you almost need to be felt and not heard. Swing guitar comping is as much about the rhythm as it is any kind of harmony. You can't have any bar chords or power chords, where it's just roots and fifths and brrr, and unfortunately, even at the collegiate level, sometimes you get a lot of people who that's all they can do on guitar. They can't, you can make, your mileage may vary, but you should probably have some kind of policy about guitar players in your jazz band and what your expectations of them, or else you're going to spend the whole time being unhappy with the sound, getting a really non-jazz sound and telling them to turn down a lot. They'll have to be able to be a team player and not be in the lead. So really start them off with simple voicings, but they're voicings that need to have, again, thirds and sevenths, like we just talked about with the piano, not roots and fifths. In fact, most of the notes they're used to going for in their power chords are not ones we want them to play. Page 229 in the Dunscombe book has a good example of some simple guitar voicings for a blues. It's just some low roots and then thirds and sevenths. The good part is that, and a lot of middle school and high school level charts will have tablature for the guitar part, which is, if you don't know what guitar tab is, it's where they have like the little tiny drawing of 6 strings and usually 5 frets, and they put little dots where your fingers should go on each one of them, so it's like a picture of what the chord looks like or where your fingers would go, which is good if you're trying to figure out where to put your fingers to voice chords, but they're not good for reading notes and rhythms, obviously, and many guitar players get over-reliant on tab at the expense of reading actual notes. And again, that's going to be sort of the problem too. Guitar players are going to be like bass players and piano players to some degree, where they're going to come from outside of your band program often. You're not going to start people on guitar in 6th grade band. So if it's either going to be somebody that's in band that plays guitar on the side and picked it up, or someone that plays guitar, taught themselves how, however their dad played or whatever, but then they want to be in the jazz band. But usually there's not going to be a level of training on par with the horn players as far as reading both notes and rhythms, or even reading basic chord charts. It's going to be a lot of songs that they know how to play and stuff that they've learned from YouTube. So it's going to be very hard to integrate it into your jazz band. So you have to be very careful about how you do it, but also very precise with what your expectations are of them being in the jazz band. And maybe you luck out and you'll get someone who really does listen to jazz guitar, or at least listens to you and really works on it. That would be fantastic. But getting back to the comping too, always make sure the piano and guitar are doing complementary but different things. Like I said, on a swing tune, during solos, have the piano comp for one solo, have the guitar comp for the next one. If it's a ballad, probably don't have them both play at the same time, because there's going to be a lot of long chords. If it's like a Latin tune, maybe the guitar can do like some long chords and the piano's doing like a montuno or something like that, and then they flip. Just as long as they're not both trying to do like some rhythmically catchy like jazz comping, because they're just going to be 2 of those going on, and you're going to lose all the rhythmic vitality of what they're trying to do, and it's going to sound like someone playing the recording of 2 different things going on at once. It's not going to be very, very, very cool. So be sure to go over that with them and make sure they're not just both ad-libbing their comping at the same time.